Is Anthony Joshua trying to be Wladimir Klitschko 2.0? A lot of people are asking that question following Joshua's less than exciting performance against Joseph Parker in that unification clash. A lot of people, including casual fans, were disappointed by how conservative and safety first Anthony Joshua chose to be. Now, in the lead up to that fight, Joshua said he was getting advice behind the scenes, or these are what the reports were anyway. He was getting advice behind the scenes from Wladimir Klitschko. Now, I'm not privy to exactly what the advice was, but I'm guessing it may have been tactical advice. We all know that Wladimir Klitschko, for the most part, for most of his career, for most of his championship run, his second championship run, he was a safety first fighter for the most part, and he became infamous in some circles for being a jab and grab merchant. Also, in the lead up to the Parker fight, Anthony Joshua said that he wants to try and be more like Floyd Mayweather than Mike Tyson. Now, obviously, Joshua is nothing like Mayweather or Tyson in terms of his style or his, skill set. But I think what he meant by that is he's going to try and be more safety first like Mayweather rather than all action like Mike Tyson. Mike Tyson was a fighter who would take a lot of risks and lay it all on the line from the opening bell. It was once said about Mike Tyson, and it's very true, that Mike Tyson had no feeling out period in a fight. Most fighters start the opening round and they feel the opponent out and they test the waters to see how he's going to react to certain things. Mike Tyson dispensed with all that and he just went straight flying at his opponent from the opening bell with no feeling out process. So, yeah, Joshua said he wanted to be less like Tyson, more like Mayweather, more of a safety first kind of guy. Now, first of all, a safety first approach is not going to work against every fighter, right? If he was to fight a Tyson Fury, for example, Tyson Fury is going to outbox Anthony Joshua at long range all day long. Wladimir Klitschko, for my money, is a better long range boxer than Anthony Joshua, and Wladimir Klitschko couldn't outbox Tyson Fury at long range. The only chance Anthony Joshua has against Tyson Fury is if he gets up close and turns it into a dogfight, because he's not going to win a boxing match against Fury. So those tactics are only going to work against certain opponents. They might work against most opponents. Yeah. And so will Joshua, from now on, attempt to apply those tactics against most opponents? Is that what he's going to do? Is he going to try and be Klitschko 2.0? I can understand why he would want to be Klitschko 2.0 from a health perspective, because he's going to take less punches, he's going to take less risks as well. So from a health perspective, it makes sense. And also from a longevity perspective, in terms of not taking too many losses, it makes sense, because it's, if he can win safety first and not take too many risks, then, it's just a numbers game, isn't it? You don't take too many risks, you're less likely to get chinned or knocked out by somebody. So I get it. But at the same time, Joshua, especially when he talked about Mayweather, he clearly wants to be a guy who, yes, is successful and doesn't take too much punishment in the ring, but also makes a lot of money. Now, is Anthony Joshua overlooking some of the factors which allowed the likes of Klitschko and Mayweather to put in many boring performances but still remain very successful financially? Is Anthony Joshua overlooking certain factors? Now, first of all, with Klitschko wasn't popular in the United States, a little more popular in the United Kingdom, but still not really a big draw. His primary fan base was in Germany and Eastern Europe. In Eastern Europe because he's Eastern European, and in Germany because that's where he was based. Now, Germany is a country which produced the likes of Sven Ottker, okay? And Sven Otkar was a very, very boring fighter. But since the Germans were not accustomed to having many championship level fighters prior to Sven Otkar for a prolonged period, when Sven Otkar came along, the entire German nation rallied behind this man. Okay, or a large proportion of the German nation rallied behind him. And, you know, there are different cultural nuances in each country. In the United States, for example, they've never liked boring fighters. You know, and I'll get on to Mayweather in a minute, but they've never liked boring fighters. They've always liked blood and guts type fighters, which is why Tyson was so successful in America. Whereas in Germany, through Sven Otkar and, you know, several other German fighters, they cultivated an appreciation for boring fighters. So that was one element of why Wladimir Klitschko particularly, but both Klitschko brothers were able to be successful in Germany and, you know, retain this large fan base and fill out football stadiums and whatnot in Germany, because the boxing fan in Germany was a little different to the boxing fan in the United States or in the United Kingdom. Also, another reason why Klitschko was able to retain this fan base in Germany was race, because there was a large element of people in Germany and, you know, around the world, white people who had been waiting for decades for a dominant white heavyweight champion. And there were many in the United States like Jerry Cooney and Tommy Morrison who, when they came along, the press openly called them the Great White Hope. They were hoping, millions of white fans were hoping that they would get a successful white heavyweight come along and break the black monopoly on the heavyweight championship, the black stranglehold on it. Okay, so I'm not saying all white boxing fans wanted this, not at all, but there was definitely a sizable element of that going on. So those were two factors which allowed Wladimir Klitschko to continue to be popular in Germany and Eastern Europe, and therefore be allowed to get away with boring performances and still make a hell of a lot of money. And also with Floyd Mayweather, race was an even bigger component to his success, because the United States is one of the most racially divided societies in the world. And it's also a society where playing on racial divisions and tribalism is far more prevalent and it's far more visible than it is in many other countries. Okay, in the United Kingdom, playing on racial divisions and that kind of business, it does go on, but in the context of sport, it's generally frowned upon. In the United States, it's really not. In the United States, you've got the Mexicans who all get behind the Mexican fighters, the Puerto Ricans who all get behind the Puerto Rican fighters, the black people who get behind, you know, certain black fighters, the white people get behind certain, etc., etc., etc. This kind of thing is not so taboo in the United States as it is in somewhere like the United Kingdom. And Mayweather played upon the racial divisions in the United States to his advantage. Mayweather cultivated a large black following, for one. But that wasn't enough to make him the superstar. What he then did, Mayweather, is he started antagonizing other ethnic groups and other racial groups and inciting them to dislike him even more than they already did. Because there were already a certain contingent of whites and Latinos who didn't like him just because he's black. But he exacerbated that by coming across as obnoxious and baiting white boxing fans and Latino boxing fans, and particularly Latino fans actually, by fighting on Cinco de Mayo, Mexican holidays, against Mexican fighters and other Latino fighters too. And he knew that by doing this and playing the race angle, he could get millions more people, particularly the Latino fans, because they're huge boxing. They're probably the most ardent boxing fans in the United States is the Latino fans. He knew that by getting at the Latino fans and, stirring up racial tension, he could get all these Latino fans to tune in, hoping to see their Latino fighter knock Mayweather out. So he understood this. Or perhaps his team understood this, whoever it was that came up with the strategy. They understood that race baiting would allow him to be successful. Getting people to hate him by race baiting was a strategy that led to Mayweather being financially the most successful fighter of all time. Now, Anthony Joshua, if he decides to go down the road of a Mayweather or Klitschko in terms of being safety first in the ring and having lots of unexciting performances, how is he going to compensate for that in terms of outside of the ring? Is he going to try a Mayweather strategy of trying to race bait and all that kind of thing? I don't think that'll go down very well in the UK. The nuances of British society when it comes to race and tribalism are very different than they are in the United States. Race baiting is really frowned upon. You can say it's frowned upon in the United States, but it's far more accepted. It's not so much of a taboo in the United States as it is in the United Kingdom. In the United Kingdom, it's a much more conservative country when it comes to things like that. So I don't see Joshua trying to play the race angle going down very well. I don't think that would help his popularity at all. You can play the villain in the United Kingdom as a boxer and have that work to your advantage, but you have to be careful with it. Tyson Fury has played the villain, but he hasn't been very successful commercially at all. All the sponsors and all these kind of people, the mainstream, have all turned their back on Tyson Fury for the most part when he was playing the villain. It didn't work for him. One fighter who did play the villain successfully was Chris Eubank Sr. And one of the reasons that Eubank Sr. was so successful playing the villain is, one, because he had a rival who was almost like the antithesis of him, and that was Nigel Benn. Nigel Benn was this raw, rough ex-soldier from, East London / Essex, who was a very animalistic type of fighter, and he wore his heart on his sleeve, and there was nothing pretentious about him. He was a very rough guy, and this was the yin to Chris Eubank Sr.'s yang. They needed each other. Without Nigel Benn, Chris Eubank wouldn't have been as successful as he was. That rivalry really perpetuated Chris Eubank's success to a large degree, because they needed a villain to Nigel Benn's hero, or almost Nigel Benn's anti-hero, right? He was kind of a, working class, rough type hero. That's how Nigel Benn was viewed in the UK. So that was one of the elements to Chris Eubank Sr.'s success as a villain. Anthony Joshua doesn't have that. Maybe you could say Tyson Fury, but again, Tyson Fury is kind of a villain at the moment himself. I know there's a lot of boxing trendies who like Tyson Fury, but in terms of the mainstream, Tyson Fury don't have a lot of support in the UK. So Joshua's without a dance partner, really, if he wants to go down the villainous route, as a way of compensating for boring performances. He don't have a dance partner. He don't have a good guy at the moment to play his villainous act off against. But anyway, Eubank Sr., another reason why he was successful playing the villain was because he was so naturally theatrical. He was a natural showman, Eubank Sr. He was an extremely eccentric character. And even though a lot of people in Britain hated Eubank Sr., a lot of them actually secretly liked him as well, because of the fact that he was so eccentric. He played the part of the traditional eccentric English gentleman, because there's been a long tradition in England of this eccentric gentleman, and that's what Chris Eubank Senior, sorry, played. I hope I haven't been saying junior through this video. Yeah, Chris Eubank Senior played this eccentric English gentleman. A lot of people actually quite liked it. I know they maybe didn't want to admit it, but he quite liked it. Yeah. So he was like a pantomime villain, and pantomime and theatre are long established traditions in the United Kingdom. So these were the reasons that and also because Chris Eubank Senior was in some epic fights. You know, it wasn't just all boring performances. He had epic fights against Michael Watson, Nigel Benn, etc., etc., Steve Collins. But there were a hell of a lot of boring performances, particularly during his super middleweight run, you know, as WBO super middleweight champion. But he got away with it because of his eccentricity, because of his playing the villain to perfection in a very theatrical way, and his rivalry, his simmering rivalry with Nigel Benn. I don't see all those elements in place for Anthony Joshua. So, long story short, I think if Joshua decides to go down this Klitschko / Mayweather route of being safety first, I think he's going to lose his fan base. I think his popularity is going to tank. That's what I think. I mean, Joshua, he does have a personality in there somewhere, and you do see elements of it if you follow him on social media or if you watch his Kugan Cassius interviews. Kugan's the only guy who Joshua actually lets his guard down in front of a little bit. So Joshua's a very smart guy, a cerebral guy. And there are some interesting elements of his personality, but nothing compelling, you know, nothing which I've seen which would compensate for boring performances in the ring and keep people interested. You know, I don't see it in Joshua. I think unless he's exciting in the ring, this guy's popularity is going to tank. Yeah, I don't see the other elements that could compensate for it. You know, the elements that Klitschko had in his favor, the elements that Mayweather had in his favor, the elements that Eubank Senior had in his favor. I just don't see that there for Anthony Joshua. I could be wrong. Maybe something else will crop up. Maybe Joshua's performances will get more exciting depending on the opponent. But again, if he really does want to try and go down the Klitschko Mayweather route and be safety first as often as possible, it's not always going to be possible. He's going to have certain opponents where he can't be safety first. But if he does decide to go down a mainly safety first route, I think it's going to hurt him financially. I think it's going to hurt his popularity. Yeah. So, you know, because you look at Anthony Joshua's rise, and his rise has been, he's the most popular British fighter of all time right now. You know, as far as I can see, certainly the highest earning British fighter in his first 21 fights of all time. And that's mostly down to the fact that he has been exciting. He's a heavyweight. He's also garnered a very large female fan base. But primarily it's because he's been exciting in the ring. He's a big guy knocking people out, and that's what people will pay top dollar to see. But if he stops knocking people out and becomes this safety first guy, he's going against what got him there in the first place. Do you understand? He developed this following because he was knocking people out. If Anthony Joshua had been boxing safety first for all of his fights up until now, he wouldn't be this big pay-per-view star. He just wouldn't. He's in the position that he's in now because of the fact that he's been exciting in his fights up until now. You know, yes, his female following plays a very large part, etc., etc. But again, he wouldn't have garnered the female following in the first place if he wasn't exciting. Yeah, females latch on to success more than your looks. There are lots of boxers out there who, you know, females would find physically attractive, but they don't have big followings like Anthony Joshua does. They were attracted to Anthony Joshua's success as well as his looks. Do you understand what I'm saying? Because all these male boxing fans are watching Joshua and they're saying, yeah, Joshua's good, he's knocking people out and all this kind of stuff. And the females are like, I wonder who this boxer is they're all talking about. And they look at him and they think, wow, well, he's successful. He's got all this respect from men. And geez, I like the way, he looks too. This is how females approach these kind of things. You see? So they're just really attracted to the hype that was surrounding Joshua. And when they, looked at him, they were attracted to him and stuff like that. So yeah, that was always an element there. But Joshua's primary source of his success up until now has been his exciting performances in the ring. And if it's no longer exciting, I don't know, man. I don't see Joshua's financial situation improving. Yeah, I mean, his financial situation is great right now. I see it declining, or at least plateauing, if he decides to go down the Klitschko/Mayweather route. Those are just my thoughts, people. Maybe you disagree, or perhaps you agree. Whatever the case may be, drop your comments in the comment section below and let me know. All right, it's happening. I'm out.